In this presentation, we will talk in detail about the later Vedic period. In my last video, I have discussed the main developments that took place in the economic, social, political, and religious lives of the Rig Vedic people. And in this presentation, we will try to analyze how substantial changes came about in all these arenas in the later Vedic period. Now we start with the time span of the later Vedic period, which is from 1000 to 600 BCE. As I've already stated in my last video, the Vedic age basically covers the period 1500 to 600 or 500 BCE, in which the Rig Vedic period is attributed the time span of 1500 to 1000, and the later Vedic period covers 1000 BCE to about 600 BCE. When we talk about the sources of the later Vedic period, the history of the later Vedic period is based mainly on the Vedic texts which were compiled after the age of the Rig Veda. So, for example, we have the later additions to the Rig Veda, especially the 10th mandal of the Rig Veda, which was compiled at a later date. Then we have the other three Vedas, the Samved Samhita, which is a book of prayers and chants which are from the Rig Veda, which have been modified and set to tune for the purpose of singing them during rituals. Then we have the Yajurved, which elaborates the rituals which accompany the recitation of hymns. The rituals and hymns in the Samhita document the social and political milieu of this period. The Atharva Veda contains the folk tradition of this period and represents popular religion. It is a good source for understanding the socio-religious conditions of the common people. These Samhitas are followed by a series of texts called the Brahmanas, which are commentaries on the Vedas, and they explain the social and religious aspects of the rituals and throw light on the Vedic society. Then we have the Aranyakas, which are the forest books, which are called forest books, and they are the concluding portions of Brahmanas, deal basically with philosophical doctrines and mysticism, so throw important light on the religion of the later Vedic period. During the same period and in the same area, digging and exploration have brought to light nearly 700 inhabited sites. These are called painted graveware or PGW sites because they were inhabited by people who used earthen bowls and dishes made of painted grey pottery. They also used iron weapons. So, with the combined evidence from the later Vedic texts, that is the literary sources, and PGW iron phase archaeology, we are able to form an idea of the life of the people during this period. Now, how did the people or the Aryans in the later Vedic period expand? The texts show that the Aryans expanded from Punjab over the whole of western UP covered by the Ganga Yamuna Doab. There were two major tribes, Bharats and Kurus, who combined and formed the Kuru people. Soon the Kurus occupied Delhi and the upper reaches of the Doab, and the area came to be called Kurukshetra or land of the Kurus. Gradually, the Kurus combined with a people called the Panchalas, who occupied the central part of the Doab, and they together set up their capital at Hastinapur. Towards the end of the later Vedic period in about 500-600 BCE, the Vedic people spread in large numbers from the Doab further east to Koshal in eastern UP and to Videha in North Bihar. So we have the Vedic Aryans, the later Vedic Aryans encountering people using copper implements and black and red ware pottery in eastern and western UP. The Vedic people succeeded in this second phase of expansion because they were using iron weapons and horse-drawn chariots. So this point leads us to another important issue which has to be dealt with while we are talking about the later Vedic period, and that is about iron technology and its impact. We need to know how the introduction of iron technology changed the material milieu of the society. Now, we know that in the later Vedic period, there was a shift from pastoralism to settled life, agriculture, etc. So, the evidence of the later Vedic period suggests that there was a transition from a pastoral society to a sedentary agrarian society. And it was suggested that the knowledge of iron technology was important for the development of agrarian economy. because the iron implements were used to clear the lands, to clear the lands in which agriculture or in which cultivation was to take place, and therefore iron helped a lot in the development of an agrarian economy. But this theory has been criticized on some grounds. For example, uh, the technology of smelting iron was considered to be primitive during that time. So that probably says that iron implements could not have had much use in agricultural activities. Again, from the excavations of iron tipped arrowheads, spearheads, etc., that is weapons, it appears that the use of iron was restricted to making weapons. And we have evidences, or we are able to conclude, that iron did not influence agricultural technology until second half of the first millennium BC. Also, in the later Vedic period, we have the evidence of clearing of forests by burning. For example, we have the evidence of burning of Khandavan in the Mahabharata. So, what we can conclude is that the iron-tipped weapons helped military activities, which were rampant in this period, but in subsistence-related activities, iron technology had practically no role. So, there is a great debate whether iron technology influenced the material culture of the later Vedic period or not. So the argument that has been given is that iron implements helped in clearing the grounds, which prepared the grounds for agriculture. But then, since most of the iron instruments which we have found are belong to the category of weapons, spearheads, arrowheads, etc., so we can say that definitely iron technology helped in military activities, but in subsistence related activities, iron technology had practically no role. Let us talk about economy of the later Vedic period. Pastoralism was no longer the main subsistence activity of the people as it was in the early Vedic period, and although very few agricultural tools made of iron have been found, undoubtedly agriculture was the chief means of subsistence of the later Vedic people. Plowing was done with a wooden plowshare, and the Shatpat Brahmin in fact speaks at length about the plowing rituals. The Vedic people continued to produce barley, but during the later Vedic period, rice and wheat also became the chief crops. And we also have the remains of cattle bones at Hastinapur, at Ranji, Khera, etc., which show that completely pastoralism had not disappeared, but definitely the growing importance of agriculture did undermine the earlier pastoral economy, and pastoralist and semi-nomadic subsistence changed to settled and sedentary life. Now, next we come to arts and crafts. Now, simultaneously with the transition from pastoral to agricultural economy, there arose several new arts and crafts, and many of these are enumerated in the later Vedic literature also. So, we have the evidence of a number of crafts, arts and crafts that were practiced during that period. The Vedic people were familiar with copper from the outset, so we have copper objects which have been found in PGW sites. Then, as I said, iron working was also known from about 1000 BCE. And then we have the evidences of weaving. Weaving was practiced on a wide scale, and perhaps carried out mostly by women. Then we have glass hoards and bangles, jewelry, etc. When we talk about pottery, then the later Vedic people were acquainted with four types of pottery: black and red ware, black slipped ware, painted grey ware, and red ware. However, the most distinctive pottery of the period is known as PGW. Painted grey ware was the most distinctive pottery of the later Vedic period. Now, next we come to commerce. The later Vedic texts refer not only to various arts and crafts, indicating progress in the differentiation of economic functions, but also to seas and sea voyages. And all this indicates the rudimentary beginning of some kind of commerce in which the Vaishya basically participated. And we also have reference to money lending in the Shatpat Brahman. Then we have a term nishk, the term nishk or coin, which is the mention of which we find in contemporary literature, although no actual specimens of coin have been found. So, in economy, the major change was from pastoralism to a settled life, a sedentary life with the practice of agriculture. What about society? Now, the later Vedic society came to be divided into four varnas. We have the Purush Sukta hymn of in the 10th mandal of the Rig Veda, which describes the origin of the four varnas. That is the Brahman Varn from the mouth, Kshatriya from the arms, Vaishya from the thighs, and Shudra from the feet of the universal creator. Let us talk in detail about these four varnas. Brahmanas. Initially, they were one of the 16 classes of priests, but gradually they overshadowed others and became important. And they conducted rituals and sacrifices for their clients and for themselves, and they also officiated at the festivals associated with agricultural operations. And they also prayed for the success of their patron in war, in return for which the king pledged not to do anything to harm them. Then the Kshatriyas constituted the warrior class, and they came to be looked on as protectors. And the king was chosen from among them. The Vaishya class, they devoted themselves to trade, agriculture, and various crafts, and they were also the tax-paying class. The Shudras were supposed to serve the three higher varnas and form the bulk of the laboring masses. It is important to note that all the three higher varnas, they were entitled to Upanayan or investiture with the sacred thread according to the Vedic mantras, but the fourth varna, the Shudra, was deprived of the sacred thread ceremony, that is the Upanayan, as well as the recitation of the Gayatri mantra. A Gayatri mantra was a Vedic mantra that could not be recited by a Shudra, thereby depriving him of Vedic education. The family of this period was becoming increasingly patriarchal. It was patriarchal in the Rig Vedic period. It became even more patriarchal in the Later Vedic period, and we find the increasing power of the father in the family. Now, in princely families, the right of primogeniture was also getting stronger, and male ancestors were being worshipped. Women were generally given a lower position, and if we compare the position of women with the Rig Vedic period, definitely there was a decline in the position of women in the later Vedic period. Definitely there are some exceptions of women theologians and some queens participating in coronation rituals, but mostly ordinary women were thought to be inferior and subordinate to men. An important institution that emerged during the later Vedic period was the institution of Gotra. Literally, it means the cow pen or the place where cattle belonging to the entire clan are kept. But in course of time, it signified descent from a common ancestor. People began to practice Gotra exogamy, which meant that no marriage could take place between persons of the same Gotra or having the same lineage. Another important development in the social life of the later Vedic people was the development of ashrams. The post-Vedic texts speak of four ashrams, that of brahmachari or student, grihast or householder, vanprasth or hermit, and sannyasin or ascetic who completely renounce the worldly life. Now, only the first three, that is brahmacharya, grihast, and vanprasth, these are clearly defined in later Vedic texts, and the last or the fourth stage, uh, that is the one of the sannyasi, it was not well established, although ascetic life was not unknown. This was about society. Now we come to the polity of the political life of the later Vedic period. Now the material and social developments of the age were reflected in the contemporary political system also, and the transition from a predominantly pastoral to a mixed farming economy had a great impact on the character of later Vedic polity as well. Kingship underwent much change. Its earlier tribal character came to be diluted, and there was an increasing emphasis on the territorial aspect of kingship or of the institution. In a passage of the Atharva Ved, we find a mention of the term Rashtra, which means territory, and when tribal groups came to be associated with territories, and they came to be identified with particular territories. It also brought about a change in the status and functions of the tribal chiefs. So Rajan, or the tribal chief, or which had, now the concept of Rashtra had developed. So the Rajan was no longer involved in only in cattle raids, but emerged as a protector of the territory where his tribesmen settled. So as we have seen in the early Vedic period, the tribal chief fought mostly for cattle, but now the battles or the wars were made for territory. Now, what is important is that the Kshatriya lineage gained a distinctly superior status during this period, and thus uh, territory became the physical manifestation of the ruler's power to rule. Along with a change in the nature of kingship, there also emerged another institution of the priest. With the rising importance of the Kshatriya, the Brahmanas too became important because they legitimized the office of the ruler through consecratory rituals. And we have evidence of the giving of dan or dakshina to the Brahmin class, and the status of the officiating priest actually became at par with the gods in the later period. So the channel of redistribution was between these two higher varnas, and political supremacy was slowly becoming the domain of the Kshatriyas. Along with this, there was a development in the sacrificial cult, and with rising royal pretensions and priestly ambitions, there took place a great development in the sacrificial cult. Several new lengthy royal sacrifices developed, for example, the Rajasuya, the Ashwamedh, and the Vajpaya. And all these sacrifices gave religious legitimacy to their power, or to the power of the ruler. Now, since kingship was very well established, territorial monarchy, it also derived its strength from taxation, which started in this period. Now, settled life and relatively stable agriculture had led to the production of a moderate surplus, and this could be collected by the king in the form of taxes paid in grain and in cattle. So we also find that this presents a contrast to the earlier period when tributes and offerings were the major mode of uh, giving offerings to the king. And we also have the evidence of an official called the Bhagduga, which who collected the royal share of the produce, as is mentioned in the later Vedic texts. Then the officialdom also expanded, and a number of officers came to dominate. The income from taxes enabled the king to appoint officers. So we hear of the 12 Ratnins, who were high functionaries who looked after metalworking, chariot making, chariot driving, etc. Then we have the Sanghaitri, who was the officer in charge of royal treasure, Purohit, the chief priest, and under the direct control of the king, these officers functioned, and they were maintained out of the taxes and tributes which were collected from people. When we talk about the assemblies, as we have seen in the Rig Vedic period, the Sabha, Samiti, Vidat, and Gan were the four major assemblies during this period. But in later Vedic times, the Rig Vedic tribal assemblies lost importance and royal power increased at their cost. The Vidat completely disappeared, and the Sabha and Samiti continued to hold their ground, but their character changed. And they were no longer controlled by chiefs and rich nobles, and now women were no longer permitted to sit in the Sabha, which now came to be dominated by warriors and Brahmanas. Finally, we come to the religious life of the later Vedic period, and we find that there was a great change not only in the nature of worship, mode of worship, but also in the gods and goddesses that they came to worship. So there was a great change in the religious beliefs and practices between the early and the later Vedic period. Let us talk about the changing gods. Now, what happened was that the two prominent early Vedic gods, Indra and Agni, lost their importance. As I've already said, Indra and Agni were the two major gods of the early Vedic period. Indra to whom 250 hymns, and Agni, to whom 200 hymns have been attributed in the Rig Veda, they lost their importance in the later Vedic period, and Prajapati, or the creator, became important and came to occupy the supreme position in the later Vedic period. Rudra, a minor deity in the Rig Veda, became important now. Vishnu was conceived as the creator and protector of the universe. Pushan, who protected cattle in the former period, now became the god of the Shudras. The changing status of the deities is an indication of the change in the character of the tribes from pastoral groups to sedentary agricultural groups. And the early Vedic gods who represented natural phenomena were slowly discarded, and the personification of natural elements as divine beings became very complex. There was also a change in the mode of worship, substantial change. Prayers continued to be recited, but they ceased to be the dominant mode of placating the gods. Sacrifices became far more important, and they assumed both public and domestic or private character. Brahmanas became specialists in performances of yajnas and rituals, and we hear that as many as 240,000 cows were given as dakshina or gift to the officiating priest in the Rajasuya sacrifice. In addition to cows, which were usually given as sacrificial gifts, gold, cloth, and horses were also donated. So the mode of worship also changed. Now, another important aspect into which you have to look into is what happened towards the end of the Vedic period. Towards the end of the Vedic period, a strong reaction against priestly domination and against the complexities involved in the yajnas resulted in the formulation of a philosophical doctrine which is enunciated in the Upanishads. Now, these texts, that is, these Upanishads, they emphasize the knowledge of the Atma or the soul as against ritualistic practices which accompanied the sacrifices. So, the materialistic aspect of religion was discarded and religion was raised to the realm of philosophy. Please note this, these developments were taking place towards the end of the later Vedic period. That is, when the later Vedic period was ending. So this is about religion. We have looked into the major changes that came about in the fields of society, polity, religion, and economy. And to conclude, we can say that number one, Vedic society was changing from pastoral, semi-nomadic lifestyle to settled agricultural society, but iron had yet to play an important role in agriculture. Then well-defined political units were established, laws were codified, and distinct social stratification emerged. And finally, in the religious realm, some minor gods like Rudra became important, while earlier important gods like Indra lost importance. So this is uh, an explanation of the entire later Vedic period, and I hope that this video helps you. If you have liked the video, please share it with others, and if you have not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to it, and please look out for more videos on ancient Indian history. Thank you for watching. Thank you.